Do you have questions?
Sometimes some people have many questions, and then if you need.
Yeah, if you have anything to ask.
That domain do this.
If you have no questions, that's also fine. Chingu.
Okay.
I've got hundreds of questions.
Oh yeah, good.
Can I come and live with him for a few weeks, please? I need so much advice. But so it's very difficult to think of questions off the top of your head because there's so many. But I have got one because I've been looking at this before the teaching. So there is a question in here, and it relates to sometimes when I'm reading, it appears that there are contradictions, and I'm sure that's more to do with my mind than the texts. But here's something that maybe Geshe La can help with. Right, so we've got in the lion-faced Dakini prayer, we have, may we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. And then it says, may all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. And then we've got, in the foundation of all good qualities, we've got seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. So we've got in the foundation of good qualities, watch out for those pleasures, don't believe them. And then in the lion-faced Dakini, we've got, may all your enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma, which I know you have to, like, non-grasping, non-clinging and so on. But to my mind at the moment, this seems a little bit of a, what's it called? You know, like reading one thing somewhere, and it happens a lot in all the texts, to my mind.
Tamora la chiwa pe mambu yus, lapcha pe mambu gogidus, chikchina, duntra kasherina kiranki, shuksa de la kungsen tanga yona yasares, so that was the part about the holiday at Geshe-la's place, which I just translated. Tene jema di Morang tiwachik di karasena namgyung atsu pecha tang menlam tang dinde nanglo la nyamle nanglo la karlagore gelwa drabu mambu tongdus rapena senge dongma ki menlam nanglo la karasegi urasena parche selvar shows ro mitum be king sama selvar shows ani long che tan tumpa drupa show drupkurchik stawchi lagyosare. Tene shempa chigi nangla karlagi yoresena menlam ina pecha ina korwe che tamche dunge amare korwe longche deki tamche dunge ki gyures dunge ki gores ina menlam senge dong menlam nangla longche che tang tumba chi gyurchik se lapsha duadi tes gelwa drabu tongi dus di nangshin ngatsu gelwa mangbo drabu tongi dus tes gochu gumindus di tende nge mat gochu ya chigredu ine yang kerang ki tende lapcha chik kyuntu gre samgidus
da dangbodila kerang juode hajan yagores da juode chögnalo dan chen hajan kaseburs juode.
It is a very good question, first of all, that you ask. That is very apparent in the Buddhist teachings.
Da nganzo ge rawa karasla de nganzo ge rawa de nganzo la digi goya de nganzo la parche gugu ya mare nganzo la digi gugu ya res kangye de gugu mendu dongye de gugu mendu yawa de gugu ya digi de gugu ya da digi de la dotile yi chosa chik dene sengdo mala 나 칸토마라 되는 주크라이 멜람 자바레스 다 멜람 디기나라 카레스라데 나란즈 롱제 탐제 되니 롱제 탐제 된 간에서 최다 tum바슬라데 디기 두에기 규다 tum바 제부 대화지 용하에다 tum바 제부 디기 용하에다 tum베게 되니 롱제 가라 이나체다 두에 셔도 멜람데기 야스 이거 아마서 거야 데로 말베스 아마서 거야 데로 멜람 잡아나 신경 아마서 디셔도 내가 제고 야스 디셔도 룩좀 제고야 디셔도 공자고 디셔도 먼저 사만 제고 야스 가인스는 최도 tum바 슬라디 디기데다 tum바 제부 디기 용하에 쳤다마 최제야 거나 디기 용하에 쳤도 최저거 하고봤어
네.
저 직접 딱 그런 게 가통해야 돼. 코엘론제 단자 동행이 규레스라고. 코엘론제 단자 동행이 규레스라도 갈라고도 슬라도 코로스의 동행이란 신레스. 제가 디 롱제 탐제라 코에 난게 동행이 용도. 제가 당한도 롱제 마신 봐.
카레 사마디 롱주?
롱주 야구 제식민도다.
네.
먼저 배셔 있는 도성 야구 당마셔 배셔 야구 당마셔다. donde 먼저 도성 가리는 먼저 롱주 야구 제마셔 롱주도 디기 두에 줄 마셔 동행이 줄치 말아. 죽어된 간사 최도 tum바슬라도 디기 규다 tum바 디기 지금 하시다 tum바스고 donde 코 롱주 단계 동행이 규네 코에 가서 코에 교르슬라도 간스나 동행이 교르라고. 제가 나랑서 코라스 동행제 이 롱제데 롱제스나 동행이 교라 롱제도. 나서 사마 되바다 고추고도 강한 누르게도. 어제단다 사마 누르게도. 내가 저다 사마 누르게도. 너가 대화를 대외 교두고면도 동행이 교지 두고도. 민두바도 동해를 되게 얘네는 민두바 동해도 세야 다시 맞이자 동해도 규로 되기도 어디 계시는 시기요.
So what we actually want is to achieve happiness, lasting happiness and joy, well-being, and what we do not want is to experience obstacles, hindrances, pain and so on and so forth, problems. And therefore, one way to ask for support in achieving this goal that we carry in our hearts, we ask, for example, for support in the prayer to the lioness Dakini, the lion-faced Dakini. So that's like one way where we exhort her to support us in her with her enlightened activity in order for us to achieve that. So here, the prayer, as you say, says, may, or something like, may there be the enjoyments, the pleasures, the well-being in accord with the Dharma. So that means, in accord with the Dharma means in accord with causes that bring forth well-being, that bring forth joy. That means in accord with the Dharma. So a well-being that stems actually from wholesome causes that can truly generate a positive condition or well-being, joy, bliss, and so on and so forth. And that's exactly what we need, right? That's why we study, that's why we practice, that's why we meditate, that's why we train the mind. And then there's this other sentence in this other text or prayer that says all enjoyments in samsara are a cause for suffering. Yes, because samsara itself is the nature of suffering. So any kind of pleasure within the experience of samsara is a cause for suffering, is permeated by suffering. And that's a little bit like, for example, maybe we have money, but we don't know how to use it well, so we end up investing into something that causes great loss. So we have this apparent source for well-being and joy, but then we make wrong use of it because we are not aware enough, or we don't possess enough knowledge, and then it becomes a source for suffering. And therefore, within samsara, the enjoyments and the activities that we do are distorted. So although we want to achieve happiness in the realm of samsara, we accomplish causes for suffering. So that's what is meant.
Rana soso den doba zane minye be dunga de ye mundu ba mabo chi yonga dunga de yes. They judi leda nyomos shagdos. Leda nyomo chayenda ta lebe kanyasan le yagash de mares ta sache ge lejeres. Ta lebi judi nyomo res ta nyomo yaga ka mares. Jazang anzo de la longja judi then Zota may be donation on the girls. Zoya can not be donation on the girls. Tanganzu can let share the Koya Jur Machin Bacha, the Digi Gujin Duina, Qua the Nyambo de Girl. Koya Nyambo Duyarba. Can't let share the Koya Jur Machin, Tarbe Jurag Legivina. Quand longje yobade beje dona de tarbe jun roade longje la longse chegi yobayina
Kandre?
tarbe jun roade longje chegi yobayina soso la quand longje yobade soso tarba tayo 탑실 로토바지 chegi yobayina na digi gyocha so 나라도 메지디 타바주베 줌도야 탑시 제토고 예바이나 나라도 메지 코나 가야스나 디기 교차소 나서 디 파샤 난저 가르치기랬으나 뉴몽 초스 누금 대자 라 진제 나게 차도 라마다 쳐서지나 레 두르니 제제 과장녀요 내가 지기를 방어제 저도만에 지기야 봐 어디니 개발 개시기야 봐봐
Wherever we take birth in samsara, there is always the suffering of birth, age, sickness, and death. And there's also on top of that, the experience of not getting what we want to get, to achieve, to find. And then there's also the experience that we do instead get all of kinds of things that are not pleasant, that we would not like to experience. Why? Because there is a cause for those things to ripen, which are karma and afflictions. So that kind of karma that brings that about is the so-called contaminated karma. Contaminated with what? With the causes for karma, which are the afflictions. So that's how all these unpleasant results in samsara, and the whole of samsara, comes about in the first place. So whenever we enjoy, we think we are enjoying something within that kind of realm of experience with those kind of causes that are contaminated, that are afflicted, confused, there will be suffering because the cause in itself is contaminated, was afflicted. And so whenever we do sow the seeds for real joy, for real well-being, then at the same time we can be sure that these seeds are remedies to samsara, that these causes for real joy are at the same time counteracting samsara. And therefore, for example, we can use in the state within samsara, we can use maybe wealth that we have, or we can carry out activities that serve as a cause for liberation. So with what we have now, we can actually do something positive. We can sow seeds, plant seeds and causes for liberation. And that will then also be a cause for joy, for well-being. And therefore, whenever we carry out an activity or whatever it is, basically, that becomes a cause for liberation, then that will also be a cause for well-being, for bliss, joy, and so on. But the point is that normally we do the opposite. We carry out actions that become causes for the repetition of samsara, to set forth this state of confusion that we call samsara. So that's what these apparent contradictions show. They point to these two aspects here.
고무추 디게 줄어야지다 고무추 디 계획 줄어야지 대회 디기 줄어야지 담미 고무추 때세게 유디 나난 도와 메다친 바이 메다치 미진 바이나 콜라 참증안에 깨바이나 나한테 태고 신도 줄어도 샴즈 스게메자 파라 짐바땅와다 땅와랑체 수라와 가야메베 파 짐바땅와 다가란체나 짐바디 전주스메 짐바 차우도 자완베베 짐바스 대디웨 좀도도 단도 짜와 친구고네 땅이네 간데시 하장 답에 개발력 친구신 사기도 왔어 다짐 고 고무추 때에 세나다체 제베 두수 방고 딜스나 엘레티딜 방고 딜 사이 예사만 치테쇼다 상상 오 야나 미드라 고무추 때 바이나 코 마오발랑 아 수직 라와치 소설 라와치 오 다른 애 짐바 고무추 때 바이나 나라 짐바다고 편유데 나라 롱주 표준서가 연구를 쓴다 내 짐바다나 나라 민아고 코미 짐바 첨부를 다 쓰잖아요. 민지라 그래서 단주 고무줄로 저 초진 사만 동에 줄신 봐. 초진 타치도도 전주선의 짐데 짐바나시 차자다고 저부상조 고마타에 줄신 봐. 다른 집에 지금 고무줄 들어봐. 상로타는 도스칼레서.
For example, if you have 10 euro, then we can do, for example, with these 10 euros.
10 pounds?
10 pounds, sorry. We can give 10 pounds to somebody. And based on the motivation, if we have good motivation, then there will be a cause for well-being, for true well-being. And if we give 10 euros with a certain mindset, if we combine that with a loving heart, with a kind heart, and then give it to somebody, then that same action does not only become a virtuous action, but it becomes also a cause for the Mahayana vehicle, a cause for a piece of practice in the Mahayana sense. And then if we, on top of that, give without any hope for a reward, without any hope for, fame or whatever, and we give it in the mindset of generosity, then it becomes also part of the Bodhisattva training, Bodhisattva conduct. So you see that these 10 euros can become the act of giving just 10 euro can become a very positive action, very virtuous, meritorious action. And then on the other hand, we can give 10 euros with a greedy mindset. Give it, like really, okay, I give it, but it's like I can't really let go, for example. Or with pity, oh, yeah, let's just give this poor homeless guy there's something. Look how it's like terrible. Let's give this person something. We could also do that, or we could. Yeah, like with like looking down on somebody, maybe a homeless person, and we can still give, but we are looking down, deprecating, or looking down at somebody who's maybe in a bad circumstance. And then we can also give with a hope for reward. So these are completely different kinds of giving these 10 euro than in the first scenario. So here, all of these actions of giving these 10 euro actually become a cause for suffering. And in the other one, giving with a kind heart and so on, all of these actions become a cause for awakening. Tangma kare tangma.
Na practice chigina, kirang practice.
Okay.
kirang kunu digana jibu chanju toyegi gyuchi. Tarba tawegi gyuchi sam tangche. Dendiji tona chigi yona, jiwe digi gyundudwa. Di memba che, da gyawa chima, nara gyawa yaguchi laya, gyawa chima longcho pyusun soba chi nyoya, gyawa chima yaguchi nyoya, da du kare, kwa rangi rawa jabche, kuwa nangi rawa jabche. Susu, chigi mingchimbo shi nyoya, susu ge, mezi digina kanyara ji seja susu mezi di mezi ka last de la be kiwu yong ya tsora wa de guno je chigi na ko dewe ju du mendo ko ju ro de do.
So this is actually how we can talk about anything with these two lenses. One is the lens that through which we see, okay, we are setting causes for samsara, and the other one is we are setting causes for enlightenment, for liberation. So this is then something that is in accord with the Dharma, or something that's in accord with samsara. And so for even with our practice, we can speak from these two perspectives. Like we could have the motivation, the intention to practice for the sake of awakening, for the sake of liberation. And then the practice will become a cause for joy, for well-being and bliss. Or we could practice with the intention to get a good rebirth in the next life, and to get very wealthy in the next life, to become rich. Maybe we could practice with the aim to become famous, well-known, or to remove temporary obstacles or difficulties. And all of these kind of motivations then would set a cause for samsara.
Practice kan cheba de si de thanda khandejil sal tangya ra sabana jana ngamse ke melam jaye sik sambu khandejil ra sik de thanda nimbu de da thembe melam ji ge imba yena ta changju to be gyurwa ta cheba sik de thanda de chinju wana sal tamana khoi gyurwa 동해 gyurwa chasan anzo odine cheba chyo aswa
So the intention is very important here. We could even take an aspiration prayer that we sometimes recite in our practices, and when we do with very beautiful words, with very meaningful words, with very positive words, and we could recite it really with connecting with the intention of the words, with the positivity of the words. So we could recite it in accordance with the meaning, and then that prayer, that practice will become a cause for enlightenment. At the same time, we could also recite this prayer, distorting the meaning in a way, not aligning with it, having other intentions. And then that same action will become a cause for samsara, a cause for suffering. Yeah, what other questions do you have? Your questions are really important.
Yeah.
Can I ask? A few weeks ago in these classes, we talked about that if you had an affliction, like a negative affliction, then negative karmic seeds could ripen. And I assume that would be also the same for positive karma to ripen. But sometimes I don't know why negative karma ripens. Like, the other day I just got stuck in a traffic jam and someone suddenly started screaming at me. And I don't know, where this karmic condition suddenly came from that would ripen right there and then. It seems quite random. It doesn't, but what I know about Buddhism is that it's not random. It has very specific causes and conditions things to come about. So I wonder if Geshe could explain that.
So like
why karma ripens, sometimes it seems random and I don't know.
Okay. Korangi lemi ya korla redua ngan so duda kashingan la le korla tes kamul nang sons. Dinde nangchu nanglo la namgu lemi ya la you can gogi yores tadi tenden gogi yores sergi dua inen samtang la ngan so nire ki mitse nanglo la chik lobur ki chik jungwa chik yorwa tela kande dutes le shirat kande dutes kensa udwa dinde lobur du chik means ona perna tering carry korang motra tang ne dodwa tene tela motra lamka teskang ne ani mi chiki tagas chik lo hopte gana korang la ke shorso ke gyapso ti ta dinde taga lobur ki esro.
Yeah. That is the mangshoras. The mangsho.
Yes, this is like one of the most frequent questions.
No, Kari is nada. Ale do the saltang with us. Then I'm gonna lubu get mabu tell you this. Or didn't get pizza seven in getting it toward the Nasun session. The master no tactani session. Pizza said the lady can a judge a Tandaran tribute cannot to one Niger, Mangaja, Saya Mangaja. She can to one Mangas, Mangaja to one of the session. The Yorba. They the lady cannot chair about Kamakashi Jumala. Kamakasha Jelan tribute mean to Guarba. How's on? Then they get Tonju and Yunju less at the Hachamangoris.
Tongyurgile.
Oh. Mig Tonsa Tagaran less, Mig Tonsa Tagaran dream means such. Did the Haja Mangoris, Hachang Mangoris, Gajatig and a Gaja Hajan Tongoris.
We are all the time actually meeting with a lot of random or spontaneous would be the word, or the Tibetans use is kind of has both meanings. And that happens all the time that these circumstances arise. For example, if we eat a pizza and we eat a really big pizza, really fat pizza, and after the pizza we have stomach pain. So then that is a very random, spontaneous, quick result, ripening of something, but definitely there was the action before eating the pizza. If we didn't eat the pizza, then we wouldn't have that stomach ache after the pizza. So there are really like a lot of karmic functionings that work in this way, that work really quick, that we can even follow with our eyes. Basically, we can see the process.
Chetan, Perachashana the day, Kerang Danda Lave Dinashire, Keralanga Dosia, motor traffic chair songs. The day motor traffic chair can near let the Kadusare say chick down. Not to zoom where the Inala Michigan on Neuronag let the Kadusare say Jorba. What the day can't chick Perachashana? Langamangamana chest the Kenji tender you cigarettes. Your cigarette mother, your tender yours. Keranga Jan, the Katu Chunga Rajas. Yinayang, then the watch ledge can Sasha yours. Mijig can Kadu Dunja, Duja Lagoya Chita, can Mogi Suez, the Regi, led the can Jessars. Just haven't devoted on that can mean we are. That Kiranga Kayam, Commission the Kayam, Yat, Mora Travisha, Kiran Lungla, Mishanda, Nyora Lamba, Lung Lamba down, Kirang Namjo down, Kiranga Shella Nyora Lamba down, Detanja Kirang led, Kiwanga led Jeji Shigama, Tanda can less outside of this.
Tanda Lung Lamba in a palace.
Oh, Tanda Lung Langi do, dear Lung Lamba, they are not singing. Le Tuja San do, Luganum to Duja, then what the Lug then less San do, Chija Mijila Kiranga Shake the Duja Lago, dear like Mark lesson. Lunga used to let on the can Saba Sagadu.
Koragi yang Lung Lang, Malanga, Sagi Made.
Ah, that can me Paraboga country Sheva and I cannot then ninjas and I cannot get this and I cannot get all of them for South. Ah, Ninja, that Kodan, Cheddar Mater, not Cheddar Tevi Mid, near the Dutch Lunglana Canente, near Kola Sik to Jalana Canente, Ninja Kondas, what? Simnalone, Kola chances of Chikin, I cannot get all of them for South. Cannot Sobak my go Shivra something.
Some look at it on Archer and Tay songs, can it?
Not sure that Tabarabas, Chesa. Not Sobak my Google Tantares, Tanta. What the Tana meeting a Java, I sound down by you know. You can don't know how Kondas, Chinam do Sango, Kondro Chia Neva, and they on a journey cannot meet it, cannot like go to a group some show Java. Daddy Major cannot pa, Kondrola. Pa Mangunora Shedava, you know. Mipagi cannot do just get some cannot learn Naman Sasha of Jure, Tanda Karanga less so much say to some marvel.
That's all. So, and then you say, you give this example of there was the traffic, which is something really random, spontaneous. We don't know when it occurs, it just occurs. And then in this random traffic, there's a random guy who shouts at me, and that's also really weird. Like, when did I accumulate that kind of karma? I don't see it. Yeah, and there is for sure a previous cause, a previous condition that brought to such a circumstance to ripen. That's for sure. So you were shouted at and that made you feel unwell. So there is definitely a cause for this. This was a karmic result of a previous cause. And then if you react in that moment, maybe also with anger, the impulse to react and maybe shout back, say, hey, what's up? And I don't know, and maybe showing an angry face and maybe holding some anger inside also. Then in that moment, we are accumulating new karma in that moment. And if we instead react differently, maybe we acknowledge, oh, wow, this person is really stressed or is really angry. Like, oh, how heartbreaking to actually witness this. I feel I'm sorry for you, you know. And if we can cultivate a kind heart in that moment and maybe even remember, oh, I am a Dharma practitioner. This is my chance to practice patience. So I'll try not to get angry and be patient. So then you have really made something great out of this moment. You have got a great chance, opportunity to accumulate virtue and train the mind. So thanks to this person, actually.
This one. Chesa mi pegi nyora laya de la. Nyora lambe ge mitige sosolo chu nyora lamba jina. Nyora lamba de la tene. Ran chanchu juve gyu dhoya chikda. Rani khoar dunge nan dhoya ge leji nisa dhoda. Minda wa sang dang dang tone.
So we should be aware that there are always these two ways. There's the possibility to set forth causes for samsara in such a circumstance, and there is the possibility to set forth causes for enlightenment, thanks to this person shouting at us. So we have opportunity to do either one. We should know that.
Can I just come back to the my first bit of the question there? So is it random that this negative karma ripens, or did it have a cause that I didn't see?
Korangi tuya tatung tadire. Le di kandre chik hop de gang la mimbare yang na di ngon la chik you can sang ne tene mimbare.
Oh, le di midi change ne. Change the next chain. Le di kiranga sasa.
So the karma you have already accumulated, and this person is the condition for that karma to ripen. So that's a condition with the karmic seed, and then that causes the result.
I don't get it. I'm sorry. It doesn't seem like there was any causes. I mean, I understand like the main cause is me in the past, but is Geshe saying that the traffic jam and this other guy was the conditions? So it wasn't random. So it wasn't random. It was.
Dinde lady tagas chik mimba remindues ani tangbonga le chik sa tene traffic jam tang meetingi kien zone lady ki sapun de la kien trene mimbares rebe.
What it is?
Yes, so that's how it is. Yes, you accumulated the karmic seed, and then the traffic jam and the person are the condition for that seed to ripen.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
That didn't also China the show chance carry or salon. Chazan, Kiranga send the Chazan, give you shows of project down. Send the Chazan, Dunga, you drag a chancini, Lahani, Dusra, your stabila.
So you have a great opportunity in such a moment. The one is to turn the mind towards something virtuous, wholesome, or to turn the mind towards a new cause for suffering.
I'm afraid I did get a little bit angry at him, I have to say. Sorry about that.
Oh, that you know, yeah, the condition lamba, that Hondu the Yaku member chita, the land Josem chita, the Tada Tabach Beba, you know, yeah, Jola Chamusaya go the midnight was what?
Troya Pumea Tang Josem Kiani Dripajaya. Yes, and at the same time, when there is the understanding, the insight, or anger wasn't really healthy, and therefore we regret our reaction, and we confess and purify this moment, then we have even a greater opportunity thanks to this person. Remember that Dharma is happening with the mind and in the mind. So it's however we turn the mind towards whatever, however the mindset is. Yeah, if you have further questions, that's really, really great. Great if you ask questions.
Do you have more portion?
Really? Yeah, Amanda, you had so many questions, so you can.
Lord, that gave you, go to the 나라도 부구려지는 부구로 중이 조성 오드즈 된다고 찾고 야레스 부구로 개고 주지 중이 조성 주시 중앙에 두즈 된다고 찾고 야레 공저 셈게 도다데 된다고 찾고 야레스 디가서 준샤에 제 용거리 부드즈 때때 구마고에 제 용거리 아 되네 저바의 망골로에 제 용거리 어딘데지다 아 미사마세 게문도 이네 보고 망고 시대를 주요를 쓰고 보고 망고 주요를 다들 안데데데 샤조 누저 참말로 열었대 아 자다 다디 경고 도스카라 로 잡주 고주 두샤 야 경고 차 인데 간라 셈데 부구라고 샤인 고요레스 다 부구도저 로 드게 고주 도알레디 간나 부구도저 녀가 사고 싶으셔라스 부구도저 녀가 사고 싶으셔데 파말롱 망불랑게레 파말로 녀가 망불랑게레 얘네 파마데게 다베 시오지 제종 시오제제 부구데 바 첨모 마차고 봐도 파마데 간도 치두고 서바 고나드니 두스카라 초종 제이스와 다 딘답지 차데기요 얘네 보고 파마데 보고다가 싸워 쉬어져었어. 드디어가 뭐야?
Yes, that's true what you say. So when our parents get old, or in general, when people get old, maybe with 80 or 90, what actually happens is they become children again. They are again like 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds. And that's just something how the mind,
just put it down there.
Okay. How the mind it switches back to the
back half of that.
Little
no,
Amanda,
I won't teach you.
Okay. You are not muted.
Sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. So yes, so when people get old, then somehow the mind naturally switches back into a child mode, and therefore then the person starts lying, behaves badly. Not that that's helpful with everyone, but in general that happens a lot, and maybe the person even steals. And this really is not something only that we see in the West. This is everywhere, East, West, North, South, wherever. And we all know that when children are 8 and between 8 and 12, is the most troublesome time, where they're really naughty and really give the parents a lot of headaches and behave oftentimes in a very difficult manner. And still, the parents, of course, have to look at the child, and they still take care and look after the child until it's old enough, until it's grown. So that's a little bit what the situation is like. And there's still, even though it's very hard, there's still law of mutual care, law of an effect. Although it's difficult, but there is still that foundation, that connection.
Tamani dosan tankodus. Dordena ngara kebe amares. Tigi kene ngalo choke mole bado. Tamone amenga tamajus labayine tende ya mutayores. Nene ame yabu jede nganzo mangu chichesares. Ame te duja jede nganzo sama chenyeres. Te nganzo jodan cheres ya. Some shows and drawing the Yabuja, some tingy maris, that the Duja, some so training with us. Right. The young answer the Muling Jodan or me, Jodan or Tana race. Yet the day got that so money. Amala Zewa then, Namna Letangia. Chirang Sarasso two body, one at Chanceranga. 다 아메기 메서 타르케와시 제게 미즈 소나 야 가르치는 야가래. 세딜라 야가래 겨치마라 야가래.
Kareriko masong amaki mitse tama padula jamse kyanga ya budus.
아 잠시장에 소소 잠시장에 탑시 잡아니나? 나가라는 야가래. 세딜라 계란을 야가래 줘봐면 지금 그래. 겨치마 이제 계란 야가시는 다 쳐버렸어. 소소 미즈딜라 슈고데 생게 잠세 종년지 던데라 그랬어.
Kare?
소소양 경과창부디 생게 잠세와는 소소 산업 가서 냐 딩나신지 근데 잠세 종년지 소소를 연구했어 봐.
Ja, so. And she is, in this case, your mother, and this means that she's the woman that gave you this life, that brought you into this world, that has definitely cared for you a lot, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And normally, somehow our brain likes to remember all the difficulties, all the hardships, all the things that we wish would have been better. And we forget all the good things that actually we have had the chance to experience, all the help, all the support, all the nurturing. And that's just somehow how our brain works, unfortunately. And therefore, it's really important that you, or we all, never give up the love for our parents. And therefore, it's really beneficial to try to continue to grow and expand the loving kindness, the care and love until your mother is here in this life. So to accompany her with loving kindness and compassion as best as you can. And that will be very, very, very healthy and very beneficial. It will not only ensure that you will have no regrets at the end of your life or about this life, and it will also be very beneficial for your next life. And it will also support that we then have somebody when we are old that will take care of us.
나서 경과체도 생기 잠수 땡에지 나서 네팔도 고구려 왔어. 잠수 지겐지 고구려 왔어 나서라.
그래.
얘네 드디어랑 나도 배 자선 뭐 쉬우지 옆치잖아. 고마 때 국내를 지다 야도 중에 때때 생년답지. 옆서 그래.
Yes, especially, you know, when we are old, then we really need support of others. We really need somebody to take care of us. And what if we then are really annoying? Like, what if we become really annoying and we start stealing from people and we start lying and we start to behave really badly? I mean, what then? That's very likely that we will be like this also.
Yeah,
we see elderly people every day, and we will definitely also be there at one point. Yeah, at the moment we think like, no, this will never happen to me. I will never be like that. But then one day, without even realizing, we are those people. That's how it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you have any further questions? Otherwise, we can continue in the text for some little more.
Yeah.
Yes, if you have questions, great. Yeah.
We had a discussion in Jamyang Cafe this week about rebirth. I wonder if Geshe might help us with that one. Some people are saying that if somebody is born with a really strong talent for example, playing the piano, that means that they were a piano player last life. But I was debating, I didn't think it was so obvious as that, you know, or if somebody, for example, is really good at languages, did that mean that they spoke many languages in the past life? It just seems like too clean, you know. But there was this story I heard Geshe told once about a really elderly man who learnt another language right at the last part of his life so that he could continue learning it in his next life. So maybe there is that direct link. I wonder if Geshe could explain that, please.
Quando casa numa jamian cafe na la Trudur chikcheis, drawing chikcheis, kewa leya ki korla, kewa ngachi korla. Tila mi kashe kare se yurasana mi kashe la chik laksel mandrawa yorwa pena royang piano taya tang she taya tang kering mangbo she. Tadi kashe ki dika sunga trudur chedu kashe ki di lengama latene dine chag yores kewa dinala. Dinis kashe mi kashe lag yorwa. Yine yang dinde chik dinde rang pet dinde yimpa tes di che akapudu ngala ne yine kirang gingma dinde dung chik sum yore mi chik lo gengo chadu koran kerik sarpa chik jaya go tsugres kaya sena ko tene kewa jemala kerik mutune jaya ki chetu dinde pakcha chik shaya ki chetu dinde changbare stadi khanre rela
제가한테 땐내레스 난소치 정답 지어야 되죠. 마음배기 땐내 바차시 semna bacha sambu sharu yares. Kiri join da che join da kare imba ina yondenje jaya de sosoge kodela kumshi mangu chain da semna bacha shain. Bacha shawa dela dene next that's dela duzu soso chijana nyangama pechi shain da yende chingidu. 나라제 라마치 되네 공로 되고 싶어서 공로 자주 나도 발라네 코 인지게 장기 인지게 되기 장대 니 기루지게 되네 계제 되요래 되네 딱 감난 가서 그냥 이제 되게 장다네 되는 아니스나 답에 데려봤어 나 그냥 공로 되게 스페이스하르스라데 어떻게 들어 마베네 저 신문 팽기를 봤어 게리들 바자 샤바이는 선들로 마변에 저 신문들 빙기를 봤었잖아요. 어디 가인스다도나 선들을 지적으로서 장고로서 장을 바자 샤그를 치모들을 빙기를 써도 땡데를 공기 게이 자야도 미션다 야인 미션도 도나테 시도와 선들어지 펜스기를 선들로 마변에 저 신문 빙기를 다서지 근데지 도나테 위치도 딱 공기 뒤마 땡겨와
Yes, there is definitely a relation to the past, to learnings. For example, like we are training now in certain things, languages, dharma, and so on and so forth, can be anything. And this definitely leaves an imprint and a habit in the mind. And therefore, Geshe remembers the story that was about a Tibetan Lama who was about 80 and started at 80 learning English. And some other people who witnessed that said, Lama, why are you doing this? You're old now. Why are you starting to learn English? And he said, you know, even if it doesn't benefit me in any way in this life, it will definitely benefit me in the next life. So there is definitely such a relationship, and that Lama in a way demonstrated that very nicely.
That's the 그걸로 제사도 하장기 개첨보 선들라 같이 공지 콜로좀 잡으면 저는 그 공시 시험착이라 들어 공지 시험착이라 지구 시험착이라 가족 공지 체차와 대상게 쓴나라 바자 샤도야 봐. 에 내가 저거치마들아 레라지 영화 타셔 봐. 그 바자를 편 내봐 이나 공지를 좀 매기까라 되고 갖고 쉬어준거다 제가 길이 싸바 장에 미지 마이다 그냥 알아 샤샤나 길이 싸바 전도 갖고 쉬어준거지 마다 길이 하고 그래 아까래 가지 좋아요 봤대 제가 된제기 소설하다 가서 뒤를 냠녀라 코 공지라 바자라 매게 다시 인기를 봐
For this reason, it's so important to study, and the fact that we do study, and however strong a habit or familiarization with something gets, the stronger the imprint will be in the mind, and therefore in the next life it will become fairly easy to then learn that thing again or access that knowledge or whatever. And without that, it gets much more difficult. Without a certain experience, a past experience or a past habit with certain things, it gets more difficult. Many of you, or probably all, are familiar with me and learning languages. That's a catastrophe. It's just really very hard. So that's probably because there was no habit, no experience in the past.
세상 알아도 로종 제스도 하셔. 하루도 추고 로종 제도 쉽게 개념을 했단다. 먼저 practice 제들 로종 제도 개셔도 나스. 나도 직사대 공제스로 델레 먼저 로종 제도 개셔했어. 로종의 가제 제도는 sem남 디치기를 실업기기를 실업 가제 개발이나 머리 받이 뉴르고 그랬어.
And that's the reason also why it is so important for us now that we study, and why study is even more important than practice, even more important than repeating mantras and so on, because study really causes this familiarization in the mind, this habit, and it generates a lot of knowledge, and this then diminishes ignorance.
페라차샤바이나 미치게 다오숨 도지심베 곰데 제나가 몸지 싸게 여바이나 도지심베 나데 몸지 싸게나 데사발렌 다와치 준주 다보지 세벨레온답 로종잖아 티 야가레스 셰타 야가레스티
For example, it is more beneficial to study for 1 month the chapter on patience from the Bodhicharya Avatara than doing...
Example, huh?
Yeah, that's an example. Than doing a 3-month retreat on Vajrasattva, accumulating 100,000 mantras.
가다이 로종 지야데 쉬워시게 딕바다야레 디 야가레 개와사야레 디 야가레스.
So study is more efficient to purify negativities and accumulate virtue.
पेशेंट चिक्सावस तना नाचे दंड गाना तना नाराज ओमाने पेमे हों सिगेनंदा ओम दारे दुरे सुहा सलगिनंदा ओम आराबाजा नादी सलगिनंदा ओमुनि मुनि मा मुनि सुहा सलगिनंदा तोंदा ना दिंदिजि जाबा दिल केवा शिवश सागरे से लाइजदुआ दिसब दलबना जुंजु रबजलो जुंजु छिदे मालो 디 तोंदा द सांता छिदलो तोंदा द सांता सेमदरो गुजुस्तिदो के डाय छबदला sometimes 고급지로도 안 좋아. 나는 취재에서 생각 변고요.
And another example is so with mantras, for example, it could be the mantra of Chenrezi, of Tara, of Manjushri, or of Buddha Shakyamuni. It is said that repeating those mantras brings a great amount of virtue. And however, if instead we use that time to contemplate, to read and contemplate on the verses of Shantideva and the Bodhichari Avatara, then there will definitely, through this contemplation of the text, come about a change, a transformation in the mind. That's pretty sure. And that's what the Dharma practice is about, right? It is about causing a transformation in the mind. There needs to be a positive, beneficial transformation in the mind. This is what the Dharma practice needs to bring about.
Oh yeah, that does got a sound thank you, didn't it?
Okay, is the answer satisfying?
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna say that's in the original letter, yes. Do not do. Digna Rangi Lunga Semge Nanda Jews. Jusim Danye Tomba La Nedes. Children Labasumla, Le Lama, children Labasumla, Kuchirin Gurus, what the city.
So we return to the text. We are on verse 32 that says, when those observing the vow of the active altruistic intention have trained well in the three forms of discipline, they respect for these three forms of discipline grows, which causes purity of body, speech, and mind.
That did Tonda Children said, Cashamu Matingi, children soon as the Cashamu Matingi.
These so these verses are really pointing out the importance of the practice of discipline.
That children the Gasham show Nimbaja Haguana de la Gubejigres, Bishop Shiblegres, some Nawada.
Discipline is really important because it generates respect in the mind.
Bishop Shibleg into Russian cannot children soon yet de la Buguyaris.
And that makes it more easy to practice discipline.
That children soon yet they changes in the children. Tombe children carrying by in children soon yet they. That's curriculum to those. Lana in the Chanju would do those. Sometime in the Tevegan children de la Kushab Rajata Narazo Dribu Tobe Chanju such San Qua Nashin Chirwa. Take you the children did met Miruachas. That children saw the gate Cheshire child those lying the Tevegan Shusha Buddha.
So what any practice of discipline that we can talk about or ethical conduct, whether we're talking about the conduct of a bodhisattva, the discipline of a bodhisattva, pratimoksha discipline, whatever, for what sake do we practice those sets of discipline? They are causes for unsurpassable Buddhahood. And therefore, when we are aware of this, then the respect towards the practice of discipline and the carrying out of discipline grow even stronger. Sorry.
Chanju Samba Dozege Rangi Chanju Samba Tomba de Lane, Rangi Lunga Ye Sungadaga. Children did children de la Kyotsana, Tomba de la Kyotsana Mashosh Tashi. The region soon the gears. Kesam that Chanju Samba to the Kesham with the Rizigus.
And bodhisattvas, when they take the bodhisattva vow, they are really, really heedful. They try to never, ever distort the discipline in any of the activities related to body, speech, and mind. This is how important they consider this set of discipline.
제가 지금 세대게 라바들라 지금 라바서들라 즉 차상하지 지금송 토야서들 시보지 쌤들라 공지 시보지 요구도 마 쌤들 공지 요구도 뭐네 저기 동바대 하청 짜시모님의 경쟁 망고시 살단 거도 디부타토나 나 상기 고방 타베기 주 당원의 지금 수중순에서도 매도 미로하지 시작이야 맞아. 내가 망고지 살단 바이나 다 주름들아 다 공시 시험시 태잖아. 나 주름 견도 쉬고요.
In order to really cultivate proper discipline, one needs already a great extent of habitualization with the training of discipline, of course. So this, how do we make that kind of discipline a habit? We make it a habit by strengthening the awareness of why discipline is so important. So contemplating again about how precious the bodhisattva vows are, and also that these are actually a cause, or the practice of discipline in general is a cause for enlightenment, for awakening. And that will really cause to grow our understanding and therefore strengthen the habit of practicing discipline, and this will make it easier over time.
간디지 고고야레슬라데 신 수라양 라신 수라양 네베 직 탐제 뽕삼베지 와 네베 신 랑라 모소네야 신라 모소네 야나 균네야 균네다 모소만네 바리나 지금
균네야 야야
균네야 어딘데 직 탐제 뽕삼베 뽕섬 템보지 와 뽕섬 템보지를 든지지들 추줌슬라비아스.
What is actually discipline? How can we relate? How can we recollect the meaning of discipline? How can we remind it easily? Discipline is the mindset that refrains and trains from refraining in harming oneself and others in any way whatsoever. So it could be refraining from harming oneself and others directly or also indirectly.
Ada debege duscha ta de ge thona de ne karsa tombe chutin chane ro tomba sala de shenla nebe jik 탐제를 되는 숨을 잡아들 dombe chutin slabya ro
dombe chutin
domba slab neberi 탐자 domba.
There's this kind, there are various sets of discipline that can have different names. So one is literally the discipline of the vow, but vow actually means in Tibetan to restrain something. So what are we restraining? The discipline of restraint means restraining harm, refraining from doing harm.
근데 동바 양다바 손나스기야 봐. 동바 양다바 손바이나 달류나 예 손게게 토안에 셴라 네베리 탄자 뽕에 근데게 지금 양다바 손바이나 다 미디 양다바 쉬고샤다. 제 차원에 맹게 샤다. 나도 두스나 다 미디 벤치 장마 쉬고셔서 지금 장마 쉬고셔서지 차기야 맞던다. Wow.
And when we cultivate, upkeep the vows, and therefore also train in refraining from harm towards oneself and towards others, then we or whoever practices this kind of absence of harm, absence of violence, becomes a very decent human being, a very pure human being, free from faults.
와드자. 다 심정의 된식의 추름스라도. 심정의 된식의 추름스 다 상을 건디스탄 그래서라도 상계의 전주선 만남게. 심정의 된도의 된도 추름 간디스 송레스. 딘너시지니에 송을 제게 심정의 된도의 추름이다.
And then there is another form of discipline that's called the discipline that performs the benefit of others. What kind of discipline is that? That's the discipline that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas train in, carry out, keep up for the benefit of sentient beings. So in the same way, I also try to practice discipline.
니나 가르쳐 건도서는 조장을 칠 민도배 민도지 민년배 진의 용서 장화 신도 있으라도 다 돈다 가인스나 상계 드부 상계 고마 돈도 녀제 랑이 드부 상계 고마 돈도 녀제 상계 고마 돈도 녀네 되네 델은 남녀 돈이 셈 델은 남녀 도버미지 와, 오늘 온도 빼오르쳤어. 나도 남녀 냥바로 미지 오늘 온도 빼오르쳤어. 섬지지.
디 줄림 somebody.
아, 줄이 봐.
이번에 삼천 던지기 줄림 알레 디 차선.
아, 샘쟁 대식 줄이 더 간디시기 봤으나 어디 상담.
알레 okay. And this kind of discipline, the discipline for the benefit of others, also entails the following. Training in never forsaking the goal of enlightenment. So the not losing the efforts in following the aim of full awakening, and to therefore not giving up on growing and walking on this path.
야, 겨치 되게 지름슬라도. 따라서는 겨치 되게 지름슬라도. 기부 충분히 겨와, 기부 링기 겨와, 기부 첨벽이 겨와. 겨와도다 강기 가르기 소소라 제부상기 고마 타वे라 강 구기 겨와 대탐제 조기 있어야 됐어. 지름질 쓰기라.
And then there is Tadi Sumbadi Chaswa. And there's a third form of discipline, which is called the discipline that focuses on gathering virtue. So for example, here we can relate this to the three types of individuals who have three different aims. So the discipline that focuses on accomplishing virtue then will be related to the aim of the different individuals of the three capacities. So accumulating the discipline of accumulating virtue based on my aim, whether it's that of an individual of middling, lower or highest capacities. So making sure that I gather the discipline of continuous accumulation of the virtue that is needed for accomplishing my purpose.
This one.
That's
what did you do? Dewe nanda zoa changshu simbe dumbe tongdani beverche de zoa changshu so ni yongsu zobrin gyuru right?
Now we are at verse 33. Therefore, through effort in the vow made by bodhisattvas for pure full enlightenment, the collections for complete enlightenment will be thoroughly accomplished.
다 지금 숨들 알람 동대 지금 겨와치디 선제된 저 지금 겨와치디 그 지금서 지금 숨들 알람 당가라서 류가 예수가다 되는 넘버 다바치 류가 예수가 남다 쳐 남다 비다고 쇼차기 척이었다 지금 숨들 알람은 남다 차이 뭐 타쳐로 봐 인데 number taba tamade garesa panja kangani bad number tagu yare panja nyumu me driba tang shiji driba tanja tagu yare nyumu me driba tang shiji dribe ge number tabar chebe nyembu dige tama gyula ge gu yare o dele nyembu de ge ne panja dige de number tan ro de changju ps라고 changju 장내 축스와 뭐 장주 고바스 도스감 로요 알았어.
So based on the effort in the training of these three sets of discipline, then body, speech, and mind will purify more and more and more. And purifying what of body, speech, and mind? Anything that is in the way, anything that needs to become purified, to be given up, so that we are fully awake. So that are the veils of affliction and the veils of cognition or knowledge. And the remedy for that, whatever removes that, is what we have to practice. And once these veils are removed, based on the remedies, then we obtain that which is called enlightenment, Jangchup in Tibetan, which means nothing other than fully purifying, removing the veils, and fully internalizing what's to be internalized, the knowledge and so on, and the quality. And these three sets of discipline are the main practice of the bodhisattvas. And in order to train in these three sets of discipline, what's really needed are three aspects that are awareness, and then we could say heedfulness or wakefulness, however you want to translate it, and respect, great respect. And through these sets of practices, one can gather all the accumulations of merit and wisdom.
Tatsi deba nanzo dini lawe ge sije nido sije nibu tarang lo di tendal san tang ga ni na suju sum de la ya da wa san la sta changju sum ba nang ge nyam ni ge zo suju sum bu de da de yi na ngaran changju sum ba je jende yo ba yin de sa ngaran ge ta to na nyam ni de sum bu chi je da Those are something I around the Taran Channel Research some such. They don't have a practice chase and that Mindusta. Nanto teacher they need the law sing. They don't have some teenagers to get the Chudusum go quiet, Uji Chaya Toshicha. They told Yamni Chivina. Tamunan on the similar, Lula Genshaw Samara, similar Genshaw Samara, Mala Genshaw Samara. Nanto let the Gaj James on the Munis. Semde mindu nanzo gyawam bashi dusa re mata jegi sujusum de la lava yana nanzo diba nayin chesa mare ta nyamne dila la nyamne garcha ya chanju sambala me dila la ga chaya mana nanzo la garcha ya da
So these two verses that we have talked about today are very important verses. It would be very beneficial to read them again and again and contemplate the meaning. For example, in the following way, these three sets of discipline are the practice of the bodhisattvas. And because I also want to train in the vehicle of the bodhisattvas and want to become a bodhisattva, I will also train in this. That's, of course, that's obvious. And if we think like this, then this is really the supreme practice we can actually do, the highest practice we can do. So it's really great if you can remember, if you can memorize these two verses so that you know them by heart, and then try to apply the meaning. And if we practice these lines, if we practice these three sets of discipline, then that will actually make sure that we will not get lost in negative actions with body, speech, and mind. And therefore, we do not even have to worry about negativities, because these three practices of discipline, these three sets, they ensure that we don't go into a negative direction. So there will never be the occurrence of negativity. And so when that's the case, then what practice greater than that is there? If that's what Buddha Bodhisattvas practice, then what do we want to practice that's greater than that? And it is really important also at this point to get clear on what exactly is meant with the accumulation of merit and what's meant with accumulation of wisdom. And also, what do cognitive veils mean? What do afflictive veils mean? Or the veils of affliction and the veils of cognition, what does that mean? And the accumulations of merit and wisdom are what removes the two veils. So then it's also important, okay, how do they remove the veils? So we should really be clear about this.
Atisha. Dadu san tamba ina dene nganzo. Oh, da chudun desunela chemba shishin baye sadene. Guba sadu. Shivaji keshimiba.
And then on top of that, it's really essential to connect to the practice of discipline with mindfulness, with awareness and heedfulness and respect.
제가 템바당 시신도저 소수의 셈데 제 시신게 제바 전에 소수의 셈게 류가 예숨게 꽤다 노출지게 예매 다시 정해도 시신 차비야. 템베 그런 수준 송송 거야 돼 맞춰버치기야. 바위 빨아들여다 템바다 시신하고 있는 바위 용거다.
Quando tempa di caraccigliore?
템베 그런 수준 송 거야 돼.
아네.
이 계시면 쉬우지 이마 그런 송 거야 돼 그런 거 템바치기야. 맞춰버치기야.
Mi paio di?
바위 되게 네 빨아들 가르치기 알았으나도 저도 심 되게 나타 냐게 돼. 와? 추도 tumba치 바위 봤으면 추도 tumba치.
Vedi, mica vedo la madrova.
아, 네. 와, 미기와 초통제 동의하지.
This is actually, you know, these terms, they are, you might have heard of them. There's like these three sets of terms that become relevant, especially when it's about practicing discipline. So there's, or also when we practice meditation, the three terms of Tempa, which is mindfulness. Then there is Sheshin, we could translate it as awareness. I guess there are different ways of translating it. And then there's Pagyu, which is, I normally translate it as heedfulness or wakefulness. And these three terms, they have own definitions. So Geshe just gave it. And so Sheshin is, which I translate with awareness in this moment, is what checks, make sure that so awareness checks through the mind that the body, speech, and the mind are not making any mistakes. And then there's mindfulness, and mindfulness makes sure that we do not forget to practice the discipline, to keep discipline, to be disciplined. And then there is this last term, wakefulness or heedfulness, that's always watching out that we do not stray, from orienting our mind towards virtue. So it watches out that and realizes if we go astray and the mind goes towards a negative direction.
Okay, I'm also Desha. Then Kelly next week and I'll cover down what she asks. What's on that? Yeah, not shit.
Please, Carrie, next week you give a call to Geshe on WhatsApp and before, so that he doesn't forget.
Absolutely, sure.
Okay. And Kasana, that thing with the Naduska Kora Georgia, the name, Cheso, Chosik, Jenamada, had the Temosons. What? Namsa Yonga, you cannot summon Prosa, still Konda Mother Hamasons.
Kiran Kora Laptu, Kora, Natsu Kora la Kobore, Kamga Kora la Kobore.
The Kora, needed than the Kora, the children of the Kora Prosa.
And Geshe would like to apologize again for last week. He went to do some choras, and just after an hour, he realized that it was time for the teachings, that it was Wednesday, and he came, of course, back, but we were not there, so he apologizes for last week.
Okay.
Thank you, Geshe. Shall I share the prayers for the dedications? Janchu Semcho Rinpoche, Makia Pana Kieguchi, Kiewa Nyampa Mepayang, Gone Gondu Pewa Sho, Tony Dawa Rinpoche, Makia Pana Kieguchi, Kiewa Nyampa Mepayang, Gone Gondu Pewa Sho, Gangri Rawe Kowe Jinkandi, Pendande Malu Jungwe Ne. Chenre si guan tenzin gatso yi, jape si te badu tengyu chi. Tuzo shan jin jam gun gelwe, tenzin kyong pewe kunzu do po ze. Chosum kulwe le mun tu drop. Pada so du je gundu jaten jo. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Geshe.
Thanks.
See you next
Harry,
week.
last week you said something about that I was supposed. Did you already talk with Geshe about it? About September? There was something.
We haven't. Lynn's been away, so I'll talk to Lynn, and then we'll talk about that in between now and next week.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Thank you. Good night. See you next week.
Bye.
Good evening, Simcharanko.
Thank you, Geshe. Many thanks. Thank you, Geshe La.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Wow. Okay. Now, Kerry,
Bye.
call me.